In Genesis chapter 13 through 19, we read about the story of Lot and the decisions or compromises that he made and how they impacted his family. There were small compromises at the time, but those added up and ultimately negatively impacted his family. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because a lot of times we may see people whose lives have seemed to spiral out of control. And it typically goes back to one wrong decision that opened up the door for a lot more compromise, and things just get completely flipped on its head. And that's what we see happen here. In Genesis 13, we read about Lot making the decision to move closer to a city called Sodom, which he knew was a city that was full of sin. And although he didn't move right into the city, we saw a gradual compromise. In verse 13, it says the people of Sodom were wicked and sinned greatly. And it also talks about how Lot pitched a tent outside of the city. But that small compromise eventually led him to moving into the city, and then raising his family in the city, and then becoming a leader in the city. And then everything gets flipped on its head as we start to read through this. Lot was obviously raising his family in this city. He was comfortable where he was living, just like you and I are comfortable with where we're living in the house that we're in. We may not want to leave. And God goes to Abraham because of how corrupt, how wicked, and how sinful this city is, because he wants to destroy it. So Abraham intercedes because basically what he says is that there's righteous people in this city. You can't wipe everybody out. And they have this negotiation back and forth. God ultimately sends angels down to Lot, and these people of the city surround Lot's house, basically try and break in and to abuse these angels. And because Lot's so comfortable with where he lives, these angels basically have to drag him out of his house. He tries to get his family, so his daughters, who had husbands at the time, they were so far gone that they ended up staying in the city, while Lot, his wife, and his daughters left. And again, it just goes to show the importance of where you choose to live, where you choose to raise your kids, who you choose to surround yourselves with. All of that stuff matters. And these small compromises that may not seem like that big of a deal at any point in your life can ultimately spiral your life out of control. It just opens the door to continuously compromise and make wrong decisions. And then now all of a sudden you're at this crossroads where you can't even believe where you're at in life. And that's what we see happen here with Lot, because he leaves the city. Again, he's with his wife and his daughters, and God tells them when they leave to, keep your eyes forward. Don't look back on the lives that you used to live. And it tells us that Lot's wife looked back. She missed the life that she used to live, and she was turned to a pillar of salt. In Luke chapter 17, verse 32, it says, remember Lot's wife, which is a warning from Jesus that although we may have used to live a certain way or do certain things, our eyes, once we give our lives to Christ, should be focused on him and focused on going forward. We shouldn't be looking back and remembering the things or the ways that we used to live or reminiscing on those things, because we see what happens here to Lot's wife. So now his wife is turned to salt. He has no home. He's living in a cave with his two daughters. His life is completely in shambles. And because his two daughters are so corrupt in the mind because of how they used to live, where they used to live, the people that they used to live with, they think that it would almost be an honorable thing to get their father drunk and sleep with him to have kids to keep his lineage going. And it just goes to show you how sick you can get by being and living in such a sinful way. They ultimately go through with that. The first daughter gets the father drunk, sleeps with the father, gets pregnant. The second daughter then goes and does the same. And you see, just this evolution of how small decision of moving away to this city, has a beautiful family, wife, kids, etc. Now this guy's wife is dead. His daughters, slept with him. He has no house. It's just completely out of control. And throughout our lives, we're going to deal with similar situations where we're going to have to make a decision on whether or not to compromise our values, morals, beliefs, etc. And it's important, again, as God reminds us in Luke chapter 17, verse 32, to remember Lot's wife. Keep our eyes focused on the Lord. Keep our eyes focused on going forward. Don't reminisce and think back on the lives that you used to live. And so that's what I have for today's message. The small compromises in your lives, in our lives, can open the door up to a life that's completely spiraled out of control and flipped on its head. Hope that you guys found value in today's video. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and share it with a friend.